Well, it's official. This Joe Biden interview confirms that Joe Biden has withheld at least one shipment of weapons from Israel. Let's talk about what's going on and some reaction that we're getting. And let me tell you, there's some serious reaction going on, or should I say coming out from Israel. First of all, we got good old Ben claiming that if Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone. No amount of pressure will stop Israel from defending itself. The Israeli security minister responded to Joe Biden suggesting that he was withholding one shipment with Hamas heart Biden. The finance minister of Israel reacted with, "We must continue until victory, despite to a certain extent precisely because of the opposition of the Biden administration and the stopping of arms shipments." Okay, that sounded a little complicated, but in my opinion, that was a little bit kind of like arguing, you're telling me to stop, so therefore I will keep going even stronger. The defense minister replied and said, "I turn to Israel's enemies as well as to our best friends and say, the state of Israel cannot be subdued." A former Israeli defense official had a reaction and said, "If we lose the United States with the unbelievable friendship of President Joe Biden, it won't be forgiven." Now, these reactions are coming, quite frankly, as Joe Biden clarifies that he's only withholding just one shipment. Don't worry, we'll still be funding the Iron Dome. Obviously, and this is my opinion, obviously, if Iran launched another drone attack, the United Kingdom and the United States would be there in a jiffy. We're already there. And we'd be defending Israel. Israel's probably not going to be at a loss for weapons anytime soon. The weapons that are currently being withheld are apparently 1,800 2,000-pound bombs and 1,700 500-pound bombs. Now, this comes just after we had the suggestion that 500 to 2,000-pound warheads could be retrofitted with these JDAM kits to turn them into smart bombs. So it's unclear if the bombs themselves are what's being delayed, or it's the JDAM kits that are being delayed, or it's both. Boeing manufactures these. Each of these tail kits runs around $22,000, but the deal's probably pricing them at closer to $40,000 a piece. And this is frustrating a lot of Americans for a few reasons. One, Joe Biden's red line, and number two, the amount of money that, quite frankly, American taxpayers are paying for the manufacturing of these weapons that we're sending overseas versus potentially solving some of our own problems, like the border crisis in America, or, well, quite frankly, the homelessness, fentanyl issues, or the other problems that we have here. It's worth noting that the military-industrial complex, first, they're very slow, almost intentionally. Now, that might sound crazy. Like, if there's a lot of demand for your product, like bombs, you'd think that Boeing and Lockheed would run to expand their manufacturing capacities really, really quickly so they could fill that extra demand. But they don't actually do that. They don't do that on purpose. Now, they do increase capacity, but they do so slowly. What they actually want is backlog. The military-industrial complex wants the government to have to wait 2-3 years to get all of the orders from Lockheed and Boeing, because Boeing and Lockheed realize some of those orders may get canceled, may get withheld, they might not get paid if a new administration comes in. So instead, they refill the supply slowly and over time. That way they can more evenly distribute their earnings per share to their shareholders. So that way you're not sort of blowing your load in like a 2021 and then you're going bankrupt in 2022. That's obviously a reference to a lot of the SPACs and crazy stock moves that we saw between 21 and 22. This is not what you see of the military-industrial complex. It's one of the reasons why, even though we keep spending more and more money on weapons, we don't actually see those military-industrial complex stocks skyrocketing, because it takes so long for that backlog to move through the system. Recall, we just approved a $60.8 billion of aid to Ukraine on April 24th, which included the TikTok ban, $14.1 billion of funding to Israel, and $9.5 billion of humanitarian aid for Gaza, Sudan, and Ukraine. But let's understand Joe Biden's red line a little bit, because his red line started with, oh, we're going to not send weapons to Israel if they violate our red line, which is going into Rafah at all. Well, listen to Joe Biden unwind that red line a little bit in the CNN interview.
And that's what I'm working on. I want to ask you about something happening as we sit here and speak, and that, of course, is Israel is striking Rafah. I know that you have paused, Mr. President, shipments of 2,000-pound U.S. bombs to Israel due to concern that they could be used in any offensive on Rafah. Have those bombs, those powerful 2,000-pound bombs, been used to kill civilians in Gaza?
Civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah.
But now, hold on a second. If they go into Rafah, they haven't yet. Yeah, they have. On Monday, we went into Rafah. Now, take a peek at this, and then you'll get to see Joe Biden's sort of redefinition here of what Rafah actually is. So this was the evacuation warning as published by the Wall Street Journal right here. This was the evacuation area. According to the United Nations, you got about 80,000 folks moving over to Khan Yunis, which was really a place that was heavily damaged during the initial incursion, and now has become a place that folks can apparently go to rather than stay in the areas of Rafah. This is the civilian center over here. This will become very important, not part of the evacuation area. And we know that about half of the Gaza Strip's population is in Rafah right now because that's where they had gone for shelter because Rafah was supposed to be the safe area to go. Well, now Israel, as of Monday, moved ground troops into that evacuation lower population area of Rafah. Listen to Biden clarify now his red line.
Deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells.
So, just to understand what they're doing right now in Rafah. Is that not going into Rafah as you define it yet?
They haven't gone into the population centers. What they did is right on the border, and it's causing problems with right now in terms of with Egypt, which I've worked very hard to make sure we have a relationship and help. But I've made it clear to Bibi and the War Cabinet, they're not going to get our support if in fact they go in these population centers. We're not.
Okay, so what you just heard was essentially a redefining of the red line. Don't go into Rafah, otherwise we will withhold. I mean, you heard it literally in the same interview. Don't go into Rafah, otherwise we will withhold weapons. But wait, sir, they're going in. Well, they haven't gone into the population center of Rafah yet. If they do that, we will withhold weapons. Now, we did already withhold one shipment of weapons. This is why people freaking hate politics. The red line is pretty blurry. It's like the fattest crayon ever of a red line full of nothing but white gaps in space. Apparently, what's very clear, though, is that the $320 million project to build a pier off of the coast of Gaza in the Mediterranean is in progress. It is worth noting there have been some delays due to weather of this, and the purpose of this is so they don't have to keep airdropping shipments. Like they, I think it's just 2 days ago they airdropped 25,000 ready-to-eat meals through these airdrops right into northern Gaza. You could read about this from CENTCOM on X. But they're building this pier right here so that way, basically, we could ship in supplies rather than airdrop them, this is a lot more efficient. Of course, Lloyd Austin was questioned, hey, what happens, defense, what happens if American troops are fired upon? And he stated, well, of course, they will return fire. However, this is not being considered as having boots on the ground in Gaza, which obviously also feels a little bit blurry because we've obviously regularly heard that boots would not be on the ground in the Gaza Strip. Anyway, Israel's moved into Rafah, calling it the last significant stronghold. Again, blurry red line here. Weapons have been withheld before from Israel, so this is not the first time the U.S. has withheld weapons. The last time we did, though, was 42 years ago, so it's been a minute. That was back when Israel was moving into Beirut, and Reagan withheld weapons to slow their move using cluster munitions into Beirut. Those are a weapon that's not even allowed to be used anymore in the international community. Of course, Russia still apparently drops it on Ukraine, which isn't great, leads to a lot of death and destruction. So a lot of folks are now wondering, what's going on? Is Biden? Everybody thought Biden was the most pro-Israeli president. Why all of a sudden is there a withholding of one of these supply shipments? Bill Ackman has a thesis on this, so take a look at Bill Ackman's thesis right here, and let me know what you think about it. So Bill Ackman's thesis is that weapons are being withheld to take pressure off of Hamas. Why would Biden be doing that? The answer is political. Biden is at risk of losing Muslim support and Muslim vote in Michigan and other key states. Keep in mind, Biden is losing in those battleground states, according to current polls. But of course, the general election polls, actually, some of them have started showing him in the lead. So it's a little bit of a balance here. But those battleground polls, very, very important. And so Bill Ackman here is making the argument that by trying to impair Israel's progress against Hamas, maybe Biden can win some votes from the Muslim community. You gotta be careful here. I always think there's a balance, and I don't think that the U.S.'s support for any country should ever be unconditional. I understand the attack was devastating that happened on Israel. I also understand there's a terrible loss of life and the killing of innocent men, women, and children in Gaza. All of this drives me nuts. My conclusion is always just stop. Just like there should be a ceasefire, which is exactly what you actually hear Foreign Affairs post about. Foreign Affairs says, look, Biden should just demand a ceasefire, give weapons, but demand a ceasefire, a 4 to 6 week ceasefire. It gives you the opportunity to be strategically strong and say, look, we'll keep supporting, but let's give a 4 to 6 week break. And this could actually be strategically advantageous for you, Israel, because it would show that you are respecting the potential risk to other civilians so they can move out of the way, while at the same time it refocuses the world's attention on the lives of those 130 plus hostages that still need to be freed from Hamas captivity. And maybe a deal could be negotiated between Hamas and Israel. Hamas, of course, is arguing that, hey, we're ready to ink the deal, and Israel suggesting that's not the deal we agreed on. While at the same time, we already know that Israel's had a blockade on fuel going into Gaza, but hospitals now say as of Sunday they only have 3 days of fuel left. So you're pretty much out of fuel at this point. I'm sure they have some form of little buffer in there, and they have ways of getting some extra fuel. But the point is, the situation is becoming pretty intense. And I think it's a little rough to say that just because Biden is withholding this one shipment here that all of a sudden he's abandoned Israel in face of Muslims. But it's a point of view, and Bill Ackman, he's very strong in what he believes, how certain he was that interest rates are going to blow past 5%. And as soon as they got to 4.99%, he flip-flopped on his trade because he took his tendies and said everything was going to go the opposite direction. Now is the time to make the opposite bet because I've made all my money. Sorry, maybe I don't have all the best respect for Bill Ackman, but I will say at least he was transparent about that, just like he was transparent about we need to shut the economy down for 30 days. Don't mind all my shorts going to the moon while I say this on CNBC during coverage. Sorry. Maybe I'm just a little jaded, but that's okay. People might have some jade against me too. My goal has always been transparent, and much like Bill Ackman here, sometimes when you're transparent, it can seem like you're flipping, when really you're reacting to data. But I don't know. I don't know about this one here from Bill Ackman. So I want to hear from you. What's your take? Give me your commentary. My goal is always to be as unbiased as possible in this, and I'm going to keep reporting the news as best as I can. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Leave me a comment down below. And the next coupon code for those courses on building your wealth expires CPI Day next Wednesday. We'll see you there.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.
Even though I'm a licensed financial advisor, licensed real estate broker, and becoming a stockbroker, this video is not personalized advice for you. It is not tax, legal, or otherwise personalized advice tailored to you. This video provides generalized perspective, information, and commentary. Any third-party content I show shall not be deemed endorsed by me. This video is not and shall never be deemed reasonably sufficient information for the purposes of evaluating a security or investment decision. Any links or promoted products are either paid affiliations or products or services we may benefit from. I also personally operate an actively managed ETF. I may personally hold or otherwise hold long or short positions in various securities, potentially including those mentioned in this video. However, I have no relationship to any issuer other than HouseHack, nor am I presently acting as a market maker. Make sure if you're considering investing in HouseHack to always read the PPM at househack.com.